Hello YouTube. Today I am bringing you a treat and I will be analyzing my draft that I did in the Arena Championships 5 this past weekend. I think it was an interesting draft and it's always a blast to play in some high stakes and high level limited pots. So without much delay, I'll jump straight into the draft, which was Murders at Karlov Manor. So pack one, pick one. This pack is quite unexciting, to be honest. Normally, you want to open with like a bomb or like a very strong pull into an archetype. And I favor quite a lot the slow Sultai decks in this format or anything green splash, really. And when that doesn't work, I also like green tempo. I'm less high on red white or white aggro decks as most people. I that those didn't come together for me very often in best of three, and I think they have quite a few weaknesses in the late game. Whereas green or like late game decks can get some super big value in the late game. So anyway, we opened this pack. The rare is quite underpowered. This card is much worse than it looks, and being an artifact really hampers it because it makes it weak not just to the famous orangutan that is not really a very main deckable card, but just being weak to a vengeful creeper, for example. Like being an artifact really hampers that, and there's a lot of sideboard options against this card anyway, which makes it much weaker. But it's still a fine card, just not a pull into red, just something you'll play if you pick up and you're red. And then in contention for me are the Exit Specialist, which is pretty nice, although weaker than I originally thought. The Bite Down on Crime as a very solid removal in green. And since I'm not high on white, I wouldn't pick the Auspicious Arrival, but it is possible for someone who wants to force white. I went with Nervous Gardener because I think it's the best green common tied with the Rubble Maverick. But I do think Exit Specialist is slightly better than Gardener. I just like love green, and I think this is a flexible pick also because if I'm base green, which I would be very happy to be, then it opens up a splash. Whereas this is saying like, I don't mind being blue. This could be splashed because it's a disguise, but you really want to play this more if you're blue than not. Whereas this is like, I will be green, and then after that, whatever. But Bite Down, Exit Specialist, or Gardener are the ones in contention for me. I go with Gardener to stay flexible. And then another stinker of a pack. Like this is solid but unexciting. These are not cards you don't want to. You might use them in high level pots, but not something you're going after. And this is just okay in like the go white decks. So, and then the commons, we do have a really good removal spell, and that's what I take. But look at this, like the power level of them is pretty bad. So I take this. Good thing about this card is it can be splashed, and I already picked a Gardener that could enable a splash. So I'll be happy to play this as a removal spell. It's a very good removal spell that also gains life. Then pack one, pick three. We could go and like, okay, I have a green card and a white card. I could go with Somala Sentry, which is a very powerful card in green-white. But it is like super early in the draft. And as I said, I'm happy to splash this. So I definitely think that Somala Sentry is not the pick, even though I have two of the cards. Like this is like being very inflexible. Like I really want to draft green-white if possible. And I'm okay with drafting green-white if it's my seat, but I'd rather stay more flexible in pack one. If this were pack one, pick one, I would go with Escape Tunnel because you play it in absolutely any deck, enables splashes in any deck. But seeing that I already picked a Gardener, I went with Gardener number 2, trying to cut green from the pod, and it is almost as good as Escape Tunnel. Well, it is as good as Escape Tunnel in a green deck because you can pretty much splash off of it the same way as with Escape Tunnel. So I took this trying to cut green, but Escape Tunnel is very defensible. Also, if you don't mind moving off of green, I just really favor green. So that's what I picked. I'm this Insidious Roots. I do like the Roots and Outline decks. They are hard to come by in high level pots, but if you're the only one at the pot who picks them up, why not? I play that deck too. You can you can make it work if you pick up enough of the creatures that enable it if it's completely open. So, but I'm not picking it highly. I want it to wheel. Then pack one, pick four, still like unexciting uncommons and not super exciting commons. We do have a green common. I'm much lower on this card than I think the community is. Like they think the card is fine. It's actively good in green tempo decks, but I usually like to stay back. It is a nice 1-2 punch with Tunnel Tipster 2 and then Gardener on 3. Flip it and get a card. But it's not something that I pick super highly. I've seen Arne Hushinbeth, for example, like he picked it super highly in the featured draft in the AC5. But I mean, definitely is the pick here for me. If I'm trying to stake a claim on green, I would be fine with a Granite Witness also. But again, not super high power cards over here. And then the weak packs keep coming. This pick was hard for me. I really like blue green and I really like Eliminate the Impossible. I know many people don't like this card. I'm fine with cycling this card kind of, and this card is such a blowout in pod. If I'm not green, white, go white, I am going to face a white, go white deck most likely, and so this card is just absolutely bonkers against that strategy. But just like I found this card to be really good, but it would mean not picking a creature, and 2-drops are extremely. We tested in pod. 2-drops are extremely difficult to come by, and I do have a white card over here, and this is a very acceptable 2-drop in white. So this was a hard pick for me. My heart told me take the Eliminate. My mind told me pick the Seasoned Consultant, and see maybe this wheels if people are like that low on it. But yeah, this card, by the way, is horrible, so I'm not surprised for it to be here. Then, okay, pick one, pick six. This to me looks like a signal that white is open. Like, it's kind of crazy that this card is coming this late. And I'm happy that I picked the Consultant, the previous pick. Yeah, I don't like white personally, but if it's open, if it's the open color, then I'll have to play it. Not seeing something super exciting, like this card is really good if you are blue-white detectives, but if I were to pick it over here, like I need to kind of like either splash it from green, and I only have one detective so far, and it's so much weaker on the splash. But definitely this card just fits in. We're starting to make a way into green-white, and nothing else is exciting over here. So definitely this card is the correct pick. And then pack one, pick seven, like again, for me, this is kind of outrageous, pun intended. How is this card still here? People must hate black. I think this card is kind of like one of those cards that if you get to the late game, you are so much favored because of a card like this. Of course, there's many good late game cards in the set, and there's better late game cards than this one, like Doppelgang or Isoni or Vindicator and yada yada. But this is one of those cards that you can pick this, build your deck. It's a reason to go to the late game, pretty much, and I really like it. Yeah. It was so hard to see this here, and it was even harder to let it go. I'm just like, if I pick this, I do need to kind of like throw away these two. And I'm hoping that black-green is open, and I'm a big fan of black-green. Whereas this is just solid. And it's trying to cut green more. I wanted to cut green as much as possible. So this was such a hard pick for me to make. Looking at it again and knowing how the draft went, I think I should have picked this and see if black green was more open. Because this is a great card in the slow green decks, but I ended up being like a more assertive deck, and this card was pretty bad in my final deck. So picking this, I think, would have been nice. These two cards, a very late out cold also. It's also defensible to pick an out cold over here and see if blue-green is open. But this also means like probably not someone is not in blue-red either. So it's also out cold could also be a pretty good one over here. So I think I disagree with this pick at this point. I was said like, okay, it's 2-drop, hard to come by. It's also in a color that I want to play, but I should have picked robbery, I think, speculatively, or an out cold and see if I could be blue-green. Then another case of the Filch Falcon. So if someone is blue-red, they're going to be very, very happy. But I didn't see a path to that with what I opened, whereas Auspicious Arrival is a pretty good trick. And at this point, I'm kind of being white-green at this stage of the draft. So pick that. It's a very playable card. And then another playable card with Night Watch. Nobody's blue-white detectives, although I'm not surprised that this wheels. No, so black could be technically open. So if I had taken the robbery, I could then pick the repeat offender as a filler 2-drop, but filler 2-drops are fine. And neither of these two cards wheel. I mean, Python of Crime would be a crime that it wheels, pun intended again, but a Hedge Whisperer could wheel, and it didn't. So maybe green is a bit more contested. Yeah, and I didn't remember the cards that did not wheel, but coming here is like, okay, this is still in the pack, so white has to be relatively open. Normally white gets fought in a pod, in a high level pod, and this would have been picked up. So with the signs that white is open, I think I had no choice than to move into that. Then over here, nice to pick your poison. Wow, these puns. Just nice to have. We know that there was a Insidious Roots, for example. We know that there's a Krenkus Buzz Crusher. So like picking this up is better than getting a filler equipment like Wrench, which I'm hoping not to play. I could still play if the pot is contested, but yeah, happy with a Pick Your Poison for the sideboard. And then a removal that could be splashed. I have already 2 Nervous Gardeners. Insidious Roots sadly didn't wheel, so someone picked that up to see if it's open. Would have been nice if it wheeled. And then, yeah, this to me indicates that blue-red is open, because these 2 cards could definitely go into a blue-red deck, and they haven't been picked by anybody. Not that these other cards are bad, but blue-red is open. It's late for me to get into that deck, but of course, hindsight 2020, if I knew that that was the case, then why not? The path to get into blue-red in this draft would have been to pick one, the exit specialist, I think. But now it's late. And here, this card is worse than Curious Inquiry, I think. So I just like pick this so that someone else will get into blue, which is not my main color and probably will not be. But maybe they're just like the same. Maybe this pulls someone more into blue than this. They're just filler cards. And then I'm happy to pick this up. I am a fan of this card in scrappy decks, and this card is quite much better than Barbed Servitor. So whoever picked this instead of this made a mistake in my mind. This card is very playable in black decks, whereas this actively hurts you to play in your black decks. This is only acceptable if you are in red-black and you can make it unsuspected somehow with the red-black uncommon removal spell that makes something unsuspected, because then it's a great blocker. But otherwise, this is feed the infection, but on a delay. Phyrex Arena that costs more. Pretty bad. So yeah, I picked this and thought like, okay, so black is open. I think we have determined that blue-red as a deck is open. Black could be a bit open. Haven't seen good green cards past the first few picks, so I'm kind of worried about that. White seemed relatively open compared to how I see people drafted. So let's see. Then pack 2, pick 1. So finally we see a powerful card. Teysa is a very powerful card. Would love to have more than what we have in our pile so far. And I picked her. There's also a case for Inside Source. If you want to be like, okay, green, white, no splash, let's go for it. And Inside Source is a great card in white decks, white decks. But since I already had 2 Gardeners, I said like, hey, I already have enough to splash Teysa. And Teysa is very powerful on the battlefield and can gain like ridiculous amounts of value. I picked her. And I did end up seeing Teysa quite a lot in my games. So I'm happy that I picked her here, but I wouldn't fault anyone for picking Inside Source and just going all in on green-white at this stage. But yeah, Teysa, I do like it, that pick. And then here, Inside Source, pack 2, pick 2. And these are the cards that I would have liked to see in early in the packs before, something that gives him a direction, like very big pull into red, pull into green, something like this can be splashed in whatever green deck. And now that I see this, I picked the Inside Source, but maybe Repulsive Mutation was better. Since I already had the 2 Gardeners. Of course, I already have a card that I want to splash, so I would need more fixing than just 2 Gardeners. I think I went Inside Source because I was like, okay, I'll be green-white splash Teysa at this point. But this card is eating. It's so good. I love it. I love this card. And also an Escape Tunnel over here. Without these 2 cards, without Torch, Repulsive, and Inside Source in this pack, I would have definitely picked an Escape Tunnel. But yeah, I think I should have picked the Mutation due to my preferences, but I was like, okay, I've seen white be quite open in pack 1, so I'm just going to go hard on white now. And this is the pick where like there's no going back, like I am playing white from now on. Then Get a Leg Up is a very good card in green decks, especially in the ones that are getting a low curve, and I'm happy to pick that up. Would love to have the Panther too, just to make sure that my Teysa splash is very justifiable. And then a smattering of blue and black cards. Would be nice if a Sanguine Savior would come back. Maybe I have to play as an unmorphed, but since I'm splashing black already, maybe it even justified to play in the deck and could be played in turn 3, which is nice. But yeah, other than that, Get a Leg Up, I think it's the clear pick over here. And then here, I only have 1 removal spell, and I'm not a big fan of this one. I prefer the Bite Down on Crime, personally. But it is a removal, and removal is hard to come by in high pot drafts. This Wistdrinker Vampire is telling me that, okay, well, there's clearly not a black-white drafter. Well, there could be, because they could have opened a Teysa, or they could have had opened like other bombs. But I'm eyeing this also. Don't need the Inspector anymore, since I'm quite full already with 2 drops with early game. But I do think that this is just like the correct pick, getting a removal. But since I'm already splashing for Teysa, this could be a possibility. And then Thoughtseize Bog, Whisper Vampire comes in the next pack, and I do think it is the pick over here. This card's not very good, even if I only need green in theory to play it. But if I'm going to pick a card, this on the splash is perfectly acceptable, and I have like a low curve, so the activated ability could be relevant. Yeah, not much else to say. The rest of the cards are fillerish. And here, Connecting the Dots has pretty bad stats on 17 lands, but I think it's a card that can be narrowly powerful in some red aggro decks as a way to refill your hand. not going to splash it for sure. And I already have a pick of your poison in the sideboard, so probably don't need two. But I'm not seeing any white and any green. So I'm starting to get a bit worried. Because where's white, where's green? Like white was open last pack, and I did a big effort in cutting green. So what's going on? I guess I'm getting a bit unlucky in this draft. I take Slice because it's also an okay splash, and maybe I go Abzan completely. But I would like to see more dual lands, more ways of fixing. But in that case, maybe I play Slice. So definitely the pick. And then again, no green, no white. This is not a land I'm interested in. Doesn't splash any of my, doesn't play for any of my colors, current colors. I just need to pick a sad murder at this point, and I'm wondering what happened. Did I not send correct green white signals? What's happening on this in this pod? Finally, some white or green cards, super fillerish ones. I have two options in morphs over here, and I think in general this card is better than this other card as an expensive morph to flip. But I am assertive, and this card can beat down. If I need something that needs to beat down and a flyer, this can get the job done. And I am green-white. This is not going to be as good in green-white as this, because green-white is more assertive. If I were defensive, I'm always picking this. Always, always. And I'm not red-green. Otherwise, this one could be acceptable. Pack 2, pick 9, the Gleaming Gear Jerk Wheels. So 100% confirmed, nobody is in blue-red. Yes, a Detective Satchel is missing, but that can be splashed. Nobody else is blue-red. And if someone were blue-red, I'm pretty sure Gleaming Gear Jerk would be the correct pick over Satchel. So Sag, we are in two contested colors, and blue-red is going. This could be played in white-black in a very low to the ground deck, because you can just hit with maybe a Snarling Gorehound and then profit from that. But here, I picked a second pick your poison for the sideboard. I think I should have picked another Phantom. I would be sad if I have to play two, but do I really need to pick your poisons? I don't know. And then we come here, and I start to think, like, can I be white-black? Because I've seen a lot of white-black cards pass relatively late. I have a Teysa, which is better on curve than on the splash. I get a super late Gorehound. This pick, by the way, Eliminator over Gorehound is wrong. Whoever did that pick, I think, made a wrong choice. I think Gorehound is a much better card than Eliminator. But yeah, what can I say? These two cards are only playable in blue-red, and again, they're coming over here. I picked this up, and I think to myself, like, can I be black-white? I would lose like so much early game, like two Gardeners and Tipster, and I get a leg up and a hard-hitting question. It's a tough spot. It's a tough spot, but I say, like, hey, if I get another Teysa next pack and like black and white cards flow, maybe I pivot into black-white at this point. Then this card is nice in black green in Golgari, but not that nice anywhere else. I pick a Cerebral Confiscation. I think this is a potent sideboard card in pod drafts. I'm not made black yet, but if I do pivot, I will be happy that I have this card. And then pack 3, pick 1. So I'm still green-white, or I should be. Green has been completely cut for some reason, and white also hasn't flowed as well as in pack 1. So definitely I'm not happy with how the draft is going. This is a really nice card. Now that I know that I'm green-white, or I want to be green-white, I do pick this. Would love me a Rubble Maverick, get that curve even lower, and would love me also Escape Tunnels. 2 Escape Tunnels here, by the way. But yeah, I think on power level, we have a couple morphs already. We are green-white, or we want to be green-white, so I'm picking this. I could still be black-white if Snarling Gorehound wheels, and like there's still other reasons to go into that deck. But yeah, Sag and this Gleaming Gear Drake, if someone were blue-red, would have had like a pretty nuts deck, I think, in this pod. But I do pick that. And then this one, there's some goodies for our deck. I wouldn't mind this. I don't have a lot of top end right now. This could be fine. Another trick would be fine. I thought a lot about picking the Archdruid's Charm. I only have 2 interaction spells so far and 2 tricks, which is fine. But this is a powerful one if I can cast, and I do want to be green. On the other hand, there's a Dog Walker, and Dog Walker, I have reasons to morph with Tunnel Tipster, reasons to go wide with Get a Leg Up, although not that many. And we passed a lot of Karlov Watchdogs, right? So we don't have an on the job either. Still, Dog Walker is a very high floor card, and this could be sketchy considering that green was so cut. I picked the Dog Walker, but other picks would also be reasonable. And then pack 3, pick 3. Thankfully, we get some very good early early game white cards. Neighborhood Guardian, I think, is better than Perimeter Enforcer. Although I think this card makes some hands or some curves nutty, but it's not super good in the late game. And if it gets removed early game, it also doesn't do anything, right? So, I mean, it's still better because this card has the same problem too. Like in the late game, is quite underwhelming. So if I'm going to pick an early game card, I'm picking this. And this card is powerful in the early game, very powerful. Would love if Panther or Consultant would wheel. But yeah, I think there's no reason to have moved to black-white at this point, so I'm kind of locked into green-white, and so I need to take good cards. I want top end with Vigilante, but I only still have 2 interaction spells, and I think this card is pretty good in pod. I am white, and I want to be able to hit like the big creatures that could block my small creatures, and I'm thinking like I will get some top end, some way or another. I definitely would like this as top end, but I do prefer the interaction at this point. Yeah. And then pack 3, pick 5. This is a card that I relatively like. I think it's worse than Nervous Gardener or something like this, but it can get out of hand. And it is a green card, like green has not flown at all. Could also play a Granite Witness in green-white, and it's a flyer. I don't have a lot of flyers so far, but I do think like this is lower on the curve, and I didn't like think about it too much when drafting, but this deck doesn't collect evidence very well. White is not very good for collecting evidence. Like removal spell like Makeshift Binding doesn't go to the graveyard, so difficult to collect evidence, and this is also a reason why Vituga's Inspector was pretty bad in this deck. It's just I couldn't collect evidence very well. But I said like, hey, some things are going to trade, and collect evidence 3 is much less than 6. So this could have been a good card if I played on curve and can get out of hand. So why not? And then pack 3, pick 6. I could go for another vampire. Like this indicates to me that black-white is definitely not being picked in this table. Like it's not a deck where people are at, because we've seen it come to us in both directions, so probably black-white is open. But this card is very fine in our deck. Payoff, quote-unquote, for going wide, but just very solid. Would like to have like maybe a trample trick or something to push this through, but happy to see this. And then pack 3, pick 7. This is interesting. I love Rubble Belt Mavericks. I think not everyone loves them as much as I do. But there's a case for the case of the Trampled Garden. Puns again. I am assertive deck, and this card is best in green-white. I haven't played a lot of green-white in the format, but this card would be good in my deck because I want to push damage. I want to play a big game, go wide. So I do think there's a case for picking this. It's just that Maverick, the floor on this card is so big, and I do want to make my Get a Legs Up better. I want to smooth out my draws. Even in an assertive deck, this card is good. So I picked it, but I think it's very close in green-white with this other card. And then third would be the Auspicious Arrival. So finally, a bit of green flowing, but not much. Pack 3, pick 8, and it's gone. Like South Park meme. It's gone. No green, no white. Sad face. I picked the chalk outline here, not because I'm going to play it, but I did see roots not wheeling, and if I can take out some of those payoffs, I will play against a less busted deck if they were able to assemble that. So yeah, but otherwise, sad to not see my colors over here. And then pack 3, pick 9, Snarling Gorehound wheeled. I mean, even in black decks, maybe it's better to get the Skip Tunnel, but I think this card was underrated in this spot. Gleaming Gear Drake again wheeled. Very sad to not be blue-red, I guess, because he was so open. And I picked this as an extra way to fix. Yeah, we picked 2 Gardeners very highly this draft in the beginning, and then we didn't pick any other fixing because there were other stronger options for our deck available, and then we didn't see any more fixing. Green was very cut also. So I cannot play straight Absan, but I can still splash that Teysa. And hey, I'm happy to see this. Back 3, pick 10. Top end for my deck. This is definitely going to make the deck. And I'm also very happy to see a seasoned consultant. I'm trying to go wide, play a big game. So happy to see this. And then pack 3, pick 12. This card is very good. I don't know. If it's a defensive red deck, then I can see taking the removal spell. But if it's an aggressive red deck, Felonious Rage is better than Meddling Youths. So whoever took the Meddling Youths over Felonious Rage, I think, made a mistake. And this card is also fine, but hey, take another trick, 1 trick less that you have to play in the pod. Happy about that. And then this card, completely filler. I'm not defensive. Not going to play it in my deck. But yeah. And this is how the deck ended. I didn't have a lot of options to build. And I don't have like good bombs, excluding Teysa. So I would give this deck like a C, C plus. Of course, it's an in-pod, so it's tough to want to have like a busted deck like in Arena Best of 1. But even in Arena Best of 3, I've had plenty of better decks than this. And I have been pigeonholed into having to pick white, sadly. For me, other people like white. But I think it is the path that I had to take. And since I didn't pick highly the exit specialist in the end, I could have picked that out cold in that pack with the robbery and tried to hedge a bit into blue. But I mean, green and white was definitely a path in this draft, and that's what I did. Sadly, it looks like it was quite contested. Green was quite contested. And this is the final build. Good things about my deck. I have interaction. I have Make Your Move, Makeshift Binding, Hard-Hitting Question, and then Get a Leg Up and Auspicious Arrival, which are fine as interaction if I can get on board. I have a really nice curve. Some of these cards, like Gardener, I want to play on 3, not on 2, and Dogwalker I can only play on 3. But I do have some really good 2-drops, and enough of them. I have enough 3-drops. I have a splash in Teysa, which can run away with games, and I have acceptable top end. It's not like super good, but I'm fine with playing a Phantom to get there in the late game. Vigilante is pretty good as top end. This also can get pretty large. So nice amount of creatures, enough interaction, good curve. So those are things that this deck has going on for it, but it doesn't have bombs. So I have to take quite an aggressive role, and I don't see myself being able to run over the slow decks that well. I would need like On the Job. I would need more inside sources, maybe a Killer Among Us or something like this. As it is, I don't have a lot of go white payoffs, but my plan has to be get on board, play creatures with toughness and power and toughness, remove blockers, try to get opponents to a low life total, and try to close the game somehow. In the sideboard, to pick your poisons are fine as sideboard cards. Sadly, not enough fixing to also play the vampire. If I had 2 more fixing sources, I would be playing the vampire as a potent threat in the late game. And then I was thinking very hard whether they went this way or Make Your Move as my last card. They went this way makes the Teysa splash better, and the extra The extra clue can also rotate better in the end game. Make Your Move can be a dead card, but I'm happy that I main decked Make Your Move. It was pretty good in all the games where I drew it. And I only have 2 interaction spells. Remember when I was thinking like, should I pick the hard-hitting question? Like, I didn't see much more removal. So the removal that I have, that's what I need to play. And Make Your Move as a third removal spell, I do think is justifiable in this deck that wants to be assertive. So I do think that was good. And they went this way is a very big tempo loss on turn 3. So I'm happy that I made that choice. There is a case for playing it over the Vitu-Ghazi Inspector. This deck is terrible at putting events in the graveyard, and whenever I drew Vitu-Ghazi Inspector in my games, it was pretty bad. So I would definitely have liked to have another card, but it's just I don't have a lot of things in my sideboard because my colors were quite contested in this draft. I have another way to see the deck over here. I prefer to see it from Arena, where I have my interaction. So like pretty nice suit for things to push through. Very nice curve. The Dog Walker is a 3-drop for sure. Nervous Gardener, I hope I don't have to play on 2, but if I have a lot of lands and not enough 2-drops, I will play that as a bear. And then again, like the top end over here. I have some Neighborhood Guardian and Sentry, so some cards that if I play them early and the opponent leaves them there, they can get out of hand. And of course, there's a Taze over here, which I'm hoping that can run away with some games. But this deck is maybe like a C+ in pod. Nothing special. I would be ecstatic to get 2-1, but I would expect like more like a 1-2. So not super happy with how this went. I would have liked to be in a Sultai space, but this is the deck, and I have to trust in the deck and play it to the best of my abilities. So now let's check some games. Okay, before we jump into some games, a bit of a breakdown on the decks and the deck colors in our pod. So this was my pod, and the deck colors, very relevant. Only one person went with a straight 2-color deck. Everyone else splashed. Everyone else. I mean, there were a lot of escape tunnels that we saw in the pod. So I'm not super surprised, but that goes to show that this format is quite kind to splashing. And only one person went with straight 2 colors. Then I separated with how much the color was played as a main color and how much the color was played as a splash color. So 4 players played white as a main color, and 1 player splashed white. 2 players played blue as a main color, and 3 splashed it. 3 black and 1 splash. 2 red, 0 splash. Green 5. 5 people played green as a main color, and 2 people even splashed green. So why was green white? Why did it feel contested in the draft? Because lots of people ended in those colors as main. So sadly, even though I tried to cut green, that didn't work. People were jamming it, and some people even splashed it. I know there were some splash Izonis in my pod. So, if Izoni was like green something, at least it wouldn't that would have to come to a green person, but not the case. And I did think white was open in pack 1, but then in pack 2 it was not. Other people picked white hard, and this is why I was not very happy with my deck. Even though I had a very functional deck, the colors were contested. I think only 2 people blue as main is expected. Like it normally would be 3, but like 3 people are splashing blue, so this is kind of okay. A bit high for black to be 3 in main color. I would expect like 3 blue main and 2 black main, but this is fine. And then red 2 main and 0 splash. So we played 2 in-pod drafts in my testing team, and this happened. Like even though people think red is a good color in this format, it is a color that asks you a lot of you for it to be your main color. It's not easy to be defensive with red. And what happens is that if people see that red is cut, they just move out from it. And this was typical. Like the red decks in pod were good, but fighting over it is normally a death sentence, or people are less likely to fight for it, whereas people are more likely to fight for white. But yeah, sadly, blue and black were not completely open, which would have been easy to move into those colors as base green. Um, and sadly, green was contested a lot. And the only color that I felt like I should move into was white in my pack one. So that's sad, but I did get a functional deck, but that's a good analysis of the meta game. Then we can move on to the first round, and this tournament was open deck lists. That's not something you usually have on Arena or on Digital Clans. It's normally hidden information, but in this tournament, it's open information. So, of course, one thing that you have to do if you play this tournament is to check the list of your opponent, but then it is very suggested, very highly recommended that you put a second monitor and you put this list on a second monitor, and you can check this during the game, what possibly they could have. And that makes a huge difference. Also, in this format, you can guess what the disguised creature is so much easier this way. And you can see what tricks they have, how much burn they have. I mean, we have red-white deck from Beenew, Muhan, who was my first opponent. And I can see they only have one lightning helix as burn. So that I feel safer with that. Something that was pointed out by Raf Levy in my testing group is like they also have extra hidden burn with escape tunnel that I was completely oblivious to during the tournament, and I haven't seen a lot of games end with escape tunnel, but I'm glad they didn't in my games, because I kind of associate this already as an Evolving Wilds. But yeah, Muhan Yu's deck, pretty straightforward red white. Has Krenko, which is scary, and then the Bus Crusher came here. But I don't think Bus Crusher is that good in this deck, especially with like other four drops. And then here's the Meddling Youths. I would have been much more scared about this deck with a second Felonious Rage than a Meddling Youths over here. So I'm happy that Muhan Yu picked that instead. And there's not a lot of sideboard options either. Maybe a Caught Red-Handed I need to be aware of post-board. But I thought my deck would be proactive, and then I see this deck, and there's probably not a lot of not a lot of decks in the format that are more proactive than red-white. Maybe a very low to the ground Rakdos or black-white or something with a lot of one-drops. But seeing this, I think like, okay, if I can survive the onslaught from this, I do think I can then push back. And if I can get a better footing, like Red Herring is pretty bad when you're behind. And he doesn't have, Beenew doesn't, or Muhan Yu doesn't appear to have a lot of early game. Like he has enough, right? But no one drops, no Novice Inspectors and Goblin Mass Makers. Just 2 tricks, like 3 tricks, Felonious Rage, and 2 that chases on. 2 removal spells only, Makeshift Binding and Lightning Helix, and then more top end than usual in what you would like in a red-white deck. But he can go white, 2 Insight Sources, 2 Persons of Interest, and 1 Dog Walker. That's pretty good. And then there's 2 Karlov Watchdogs as like a tier 2 payoff for going white, but still scary, right? So my objective in this matchup is survive and see if I can put the opponent in a back foot and win that way. So I'm not purely control. I also need to hit opponent to put them into the red zone and stuff. But at least I know what to play around, and I know how much burn Muhan Yu can have. So let's keep this deck in mind while I'm analyzing the games. Game 1, I'm on the play, so that is great. You want to be on the play, especially against an aggressive Boros decks. And this is my opening hand. So 2-drop, 3-drop, the best 3-drop in my deck, and I can cast it. I have 1 single swamp in my deck, and I'm on the play. So ideally, I play this on 2 and then play this on 3 and start to profit. Just 2 spells and 5 lands. That's too many lands, more than I would like. But seeing as I'm on the play and I have this possibly way to snowball the game, this is keep. So we play, and then important to not show the swamp. I draw another seasoned consultant. It's better than drawing another land for sure. Play 1. And Beenew plays the herring without attacking. So he places it at a blocker. It's like, darn it. Harry, I always thought like, the downside of this card is it never blocks. Yes, it can block if you played second main phase. So that was a bit annoying. And I draw a make your move. So we drew 2 spells, which is good after a 5-lander. So it makes the hand more playable. And this is important. I think I do a very correct play over here. Important not to play the swamp pre-combat. Because if I play a swamp pre-combat and I attack, I'm pretty sure Beenew is going to block. Because he cannot allow me to then play Taysai and profit. And I do have 2 tricks in my deck. I have Get a Leg Up and Auspicious Arrival. So it's a free attack in a way, to attack with a seasoned consultant and threaten to eat the herring with maybe a trick, with a Get a Leg Up, for example. So that's what I do. I go and I don't show that I could be playing Teysa. And opponent takes it. I do think he should have blocked knowing that I have a Teysa, but he doesn't know that I have a swamp and a Teysa to follow up. So I'm like high-fiving myself over here. Get my clue, and then herring attacks. I know there's a Felonious Rage, so I'm like, no, I'm not going to block that. I want to get more value out of this. Don't need to block that at this point. You need to remove this with a Helix or a Makeshift Binding. Otherwise, I'm not going to put her in the red zone. And another herring second main phase. And this I think is important to note, that he didn't put 2 red herrings and attack, because it means like maybe he wants to block the consultant, or if he does have the Felonious Rage and I attack with Teysa, he could trade, right? So important that he didn't go with 2. Of course, I could try to tell him like, okay, do you have the? Oh, by the way, he also has Chases On. Never blocking the herring with a Chases On. He has 2 Chases On in the deck. Never blocking with Teysa. So, but if he had played a second herring and attack with both, I would then need to think like, do I want to block? Answer would also be no because of Felonious Rage, and then I could just go to town and get more value. So here, I'm thinking obviously about Felonious Rage. So I could decide not to go ahead and just play like Sentry and Consultant, or crack the clue and start to make a Spirit. But I think like, okay, if there's a Felonious Rage, I have the interaction, I have Make Your Move. Happy that I made deck this. So I'm just going to jam, and that's what I did. And block and a Felonious Rage on that. And thankfully I have a Make Your Move to get my 2-for-1 over there. Also defensible to just attack with the Consultant and then play Sentry and Consultant or crack a clue. But this way I still get another investigation. So again, remove Teysa, or this game is going to be very difficult for Muhan Yu. Then this has to attack, which is bad in this case for them. And then, okay, Bus Crusher. My Make Your Move is gone. It's kind of sad that my Make Your Move is gone, because it would be a nice answer to this. And this is a lot of stats over here. And I cannot remove this. So I don't know if everyone would attack with Teysa in this case, but Teysa has already done a lot of damage. 2 clues from this. And if it also trades with a 4-drop, that's all that you need to do, Teysa. That's all that bomb needs to do to win games. So I definitely get her in. And Muhan Yu thinks like, should I block? Should I not block? This is getting out of hand. Of course, if it blocks, then I create a flyer and then I deploy more things. So Teysa would have done an amazing job by investigating twice, creating a Spirit, and killing a big boy. So he lets it go, but then that just starts to get out of hand. I get a Spirit, and I'm thinking like, do I play the Enforcer or do I wait and make another Spirit? I do play the Enforcer because that means like, okay, if they haven't blocked Teysa, I'm getting so much value that Beenew needs to race, right? There's 2 chases on, the Felonious Rage is gone, and a Lightning Helix. He can get in for some damage with the Bus Crusher, and that's going to be strong. So a life-linking flyer and try to offset some of that damage is nice. And I will be able to pump it and stuff. So now I've gotten 3 clues in the Spirit already. So just amazing work. Teysa over here. And here I block the Red Herring with both. Trying to get it off the board. It could be reasonable to just block with the Consultant, honestly, because I think at this point I'm like, okay, just use your trick, use your chases on, get rid of these 2 things. I already have enough value, so I think I just want to press on using the trick. And he doesn't even use the trick; he just cycles the Herring, which is even better for me. I do get attacked for 4. And then play the Detective to pump, get in. Gets in, I've gained 2 life. This is a super good spot to be in. And I just create another Spirit. And end of turn of opponent's turn, I will create even another Spirit. I'm still investigating. Teysa just won this game on her own. Very lucky I got here to be on the play, to have the only swamp in my deck so that I could play Teysa on 3. But also, my opponent didn't have the Helix and the Makeshift Binding. I didn't play into the trick. I had to make your move to blow out my opponent on that front, and then I won. So I got pretty lucky over here that Teysa couldn't be removed. I could play Teysa so early. So let's see how it goes in the next game, where I'm on the draw. I'm on the draw, and I draw this hand. It's obviously a mulligan. We don't like 1-landers. Sad to mulligan, but have to do it. Second hand is also a 1-lander. I mean, I have the Teysa, but it's 1-lander, and you have to multi 5. What can you do? Sucks big time, but at least now we do get enough lands and like 1 and 2 possibly. But here I just bottom the swamp because I'm going to be casting it from Gardener. I think I bottom also a Plains. I'm running 17 lands, so I'm hoping I cannot bottom. I'm greedy over here. I'm already at multi 5, so I need to get more cards. So I just bottom the 2 lands. Hunch is fine. I go with Maverick, and also Maverick helps get more lands. So that's why I bottom the 2 other lands. And what I see on top of the library is Sentry and Plains. And I actually think like, Sentry and Plains. This is actually good because I can play Sentry on 2. At this point, I don't have a 2-drop. I have Gardener, but I would like to play that as a morph, especially to offset the multi 5. And I also want to get a Swamp to play a Teysa, which I top deck again. So I just I said like Sentry on 2, then the Plains to play the Gardener, and I think I should be in a good spot. All things considered that I had to take a multi 5. Herring comes in. So there's the Sentry, and I get in. I thought like, should I stay back and threaten to double block? And I'm thinking like, then the Chases On would be completely bad for me, or Felonious Rage would also be super bad for me. So I'm like, no, I'm not blocking this Herring yet. So Herring gets in. Actually, no, I go ahead and say like, I'm behind. This is a good play for me. Like, I want to block, but I don't want to double block. If you are going to kill my creature, spend a whole card on it, but I'm not giving both my creatures for that. So I'm glad that I block over there. Then the Insight Source comes in, play my Gardener Disguised, and there was 2-drop and 3-drop, and I'm on the draw. And there's also the equipment over here, which can get scary, but all things considered, I think I'm doing well. Seeing the equip is a bit scary, but it also means there's not extra development. So in a way, I'm happy. And I could potentially trade with Gardener once I fetched my land. So, all right. And then this is interesting. I can fetch the swamp, then play Teysa, and we saw how Teysa won the game last time. And I get into the red zone with two of these creatures. Maybe it was correct to keep the sentry back, to keep the detective back. But I'm thinking here, like, if I just get in with the gardener and they double block, I don't get the trigger with Teysa. And I want to get the trigger. Maybe they don't double block because of my tricks. Maybe just the gardener was correct. But I thought, like, I am still in no danger to die. And opponent didn't develop the board extra, it just powered up a creature. So I was confident, like, I can still make this attack. And any blocks now for opponent are bad. So I still get to damage and still get to go with Teysa. So no blocks, fetch my swamp, hit for 5, which is not nothing, play Teysa, boom, get my clue. Already getting value out of her. So Herring gets in, but Detective doesn't get in, which is very interesting. I would expect, like, if there's a trick, Detective should also come in. I wouldn't have blocked the Detective because I want to say, like, hey, either you remove Teysa or she's going to stick there and get me more value. So only the Herring, I'm definitely not blocking, and Bus Crusher. So again, would be nice to draw a removal for that, but otherwise I have a Vigilante also as a 5-drop. And I draw Auspicious Arrival, which is pretty good. Gives me a lot of options. And here I just attack with the Gardener. I say, like, okay, the Arrival is... I take a bit of a defensive stand because, sure, I'm still not going to die, but, like, this Krenko's Bus Crusher is a bit scary now that there's I don't have any removal. And I'm planning to Arrival into the Sentry to trade with the Bus Crusher. Now that's very risky versus tricks like the chase is on and all of that. But I think it's good to take a small step back over here and see if he didn't have the tricks before. He didn't attack with this, so I'm assuming he doesn't have a trick. He could top deck it. But I decided to take a smaller stance over here and try to blow up with Arrival and Clue, and, like, I can make more spirits. So both block for the trade, and I'm happy to see, like, I'm reducing the board of Boros. I don't mind not getting a trigger over here. I do crack a spirit, and then I have the make your move. So, like, I do get the removal now for Krenko's Bus Crusher, and again, Krenko's Bus Crusher, not that impressive when it gets removed, and it can get removed very easily. So let's see if there's a trick. I'm hoping, like, okay, will there be a trick of some sort that I can blow up? And this time I put both in front. And even if there's a trick, I don't mind losing these two creatures over here. There's one less trick. But hey, it trades. The scary 4/2 creature is no longer there, and re-equipping would cost mana. And Person of Interest. Okay, and with Person of Interest, I just removed the Krenko's Bus Crusher. And now, even though Person of Interest is really good, I can go to town with Teysa. I can play the Vigilante. And I feel much more secure than with a 4/4 Flamper flying tramp along the battlefield. So play the Vigilante and put the counter on Teysa. This is interesting, not put it on the Sentry. Teysa's a removal magnet already, like, she's going to die. Well, putting the counter on her means, like, Lightning Helix does not remove her anymore. So it's only Makeshift Binding. And there's no other removal in the deck for Muhan. So because of open deck lists, I did it like that. And I just get in. Maybe it's correct to keep the Sumala Sentry back and just sit on the value. But I don't know. There's no on the job. And I would be happy if they equip with this into this and they attack with both. Maybe I just trade. And then I just take 2 and there's, like, a lot of tempo loss over there. So getting in, maybe Sumala Sentry, I think I should have maybe left it back. Being responsible, but I do feel confident enough to attack over here and then just put the opponent in a worse spot. It also means, like, if they just develop to the board and they attack with these two. Like equip attack with this. I just let it go through. There's only Lightning Helix, so that would be 6 plus 3, 9. I'm still not dead. And then in the crackback, I have removal and auspicious arrival. So this is why I got in with also the sentry, because like it's very difficult right now for opponent if they go and try to kill me. They cannot kill me, and on the crackback they're dead. So that's also the reason why I did that. And then look at that. Opponent has binding but cannot remove the Tesa. They need to remove the Vigilante because of the threat. And that does give them 2 extra life, and they attack. And now I'm starting to get low on life. So now I have to be a bit more careful. Play my land, and here, if like the equipment can get with a person of interest, that would be very difficult to block. So I do need to remove. First, let's create the Spirit, and the Fenestrated Phantom is fine. We remove that, create a counter, get in. This time I do leave the sentry back, and I don't mind trading it. Get the clue, and I will make another Spirit next turn. But I'm feeling very confident about this game now. Try to build the board. Opponent needs to try to build the board and somehow get me with a trick or something. And I like this. I think this is a really nice attack because I'm threatening lethal already like this. So if they want to avoid lethal, they need to chump block or like try to put everything on top of Tesla, which completely blows them out. But I'm also leaving things back. So I just do that, and opponent doesn't block. They need all of those cards to make this like a 3-power attacker, and then I just win. I get the lethal. If there's no blocks, I just lethal. But it was good to leave these things back for the possible onslaught. But regardless, again, I got to play Taste again. I think the opponent was a bit unlucky or stumbled a bit. But yeah, equipping on that herring, and I could take it, and knowing how much burn they have in the deck was really crucial for this game. So that was match 1, and I went 1-0. So already, if I win another match 2-1, I would be pretty happy with how this deck performed. But yeah, so at least it's not 0-3, and in the AC4 I went 1-2, so got again a win over here, and I felt pretty good about this. All right, round 2 versus Bernardo Torres. Let's take a look at our opponent's deck and pool. So, blue-white detectives, I'm assuming, because of the private eye, with Doppelgang. So, splash Doppelgang, this card is absolute nuts. I'm definitely also splashing in my opponent's place, even like with Escape Tunnel and Public Thoroughfare. So like there's nice splashing. So this is one of those that splash green. And also an Alquist Prophet Master's Loot. So for me to have been really happy with my deck, I would have liked like 2 of these kind of bombs, in my deck. Things that if you go to the late game, you kind of like press an I win button, and unless the opponent also has an I win button, you are pretty much going to win that game. Not a lot of creatures, and not a lot of early game. So like, of course, Inspector great, but then only 3 creatures, so 4 creatures with Perimeter Enforcer. And then 2 tricks, a Case of the Gateway Express, which is probably not super good with so low creatures, and the tricks also get worse with less creatures. And some fillerish kind of creatures over here too. But 2 outcolds are great. The Auspicious Arrivals are quite solid too. So even if there's like fillerish creatures and a bit of a clunky curve, there's still 2 bombs over here, which make me think I need to be the beatdown over here. I need to get this deck before they land the Doppelgang or before they get to Sphinx's Revelation with Alquist Prophet, at which point I'm very, very unlikely to win the game. I disagree with this Buried in the Garden splash. Like, there's 2 out colds, make your move, Case of the Gateway Express. and even auspicious arrivals, although those are cannot be considered removal in a not so assertive deck. But you don't need to splash this. This card is very powerful if you're green splashy or green white, but otherwise, I see here a dramatic accusation. I think I would play this instead of the buried, just to avoid the possibility of this not being online. And then I also see that there is a reasonable doubt in the board, and I think this is a mistake. I would definitely want to play this with such little early game. Having reasonable doubt on two is very fine, and you want to go into the late game with this deck, considering you have, like I said, like two really good cards over there. So I would have definitely played that. Eliminate the impossible. There's already one, so I understand not playing two. And I'm wondering if there's enough artifacts for the case. There's two out calls, Inspector and Alquist Proft, and eliminate the impossible, and two auspicious arrivals. So that's quite a few of them actually. But yeah, it's also reasonable not to run it. Wondering if the thinking cap is even worth it. It's not a lot of creatures, so these analysts are very fillerish, but I mean it is early plays. And why not play them? So plan against this deck, I am definitely the beatdown. Unlike in round one, where like I could try to survive and then take over the game, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I really need to get my opponent dead. Let's check the games. So I'm on the play and I say this hand. It's pretty good. Sumala Sentry on 2, followed by Gardener on 3, flip, and get some pressure going on, which is really what I want. This is not the 2-drop I want to play early game, and I would need some evidence, and I would rather have 4 spells and 3 lands than 4 lands and 3 spells, especially with a Gardener that's going to fetch me a land. But yeah, this hand is a keep, looks good. Hopefully we will draw Teysa as we did in the previous round. So we develop as expected, get in for 1, play the Gardener, and we've been quite unlucky. We had 4 lands in the opener hand, and we draw 2 more lands. We really want to draw another Disguise or Morph for next turn, so I can flip here and then like play a Morph and then threaten to get like super big Sentry. So let's see if we can get there. Meanwhile, opponent Trons on turn 3 must feel nice, and they play a 3/2, which contests the board. So this is looking good, and drawing yet another land that is terrible. That is really, really bad. I get in with both. I need to pressure the opponent, and I have some tricks. It would be bad if this trades with my Gardener, because I don't really have pressure otherwise. And I could there's a case for keeping this back so that it prevents this from attacking and looting. But as I said, I really need to get the pressure on. And especially as I cannot really follow up with more pressure, this is starting to look sketchy for me. I do flip. There's no blocks. I flip, get a land, getting for 5, and I have to follow this up with a very, very sad Vitukazi Inspector that has no evidence, just a 1/3 reach when I'm trying to beat down. That's just very, very sad news. Opponent untaps and gets in. I understand it for looting, and they discard lands, so I'm assuming they have enough lands and then some spells. So yeah, it's not the best, but let's see what we draw. This is very, very annoying because now it's holding the Gardener back. If I trade, they get a extra value. So a top deck right now that would be really nice, for example, is Makeshift Binding to remove this and start to get even more. But even then, they probably have more spells, so it's just really bad. And well, what can you do? You draw yet another land. This is kind of hilarious. All lands. The game is kind of over at this point. I mean, I do get in with the Sentry for 2 extra points of damage. But what would need to happen here to win this game? I think I would need to maybe draw Teysa somehow and convert these lands into extra cards and spirits, maybe draw Defenestrated Phantom, try to get in the air somehow. It's just looking really, really bad. Just being in turn 5 and burning all this mana. It also tells the opponent I have nothing if I'm not using any mana. So they should be feeling really good at this point. They are feeling so good that they even get in with both. Loot away yet another land. So I'm assuming they're sculpting like a super good hand. Inspector obviously very good. Finally draw a non-land and it's a 1-drop. Where were you, my friend Rubblebed Maverick, all this time? If you had come here 2 turns earlier, we would have been 2 lands. This would have been a totally different game. I would have had like some good chances. As it is, I was expecting maybe an outcode over here, but I don't see anything. So I just need to get in. If opponent allows me to attack, I need to get in. Maybe they should be aware of any tricks that I have drawn. But if they're blocking like this, they probably have like a trick of their own on arrival. And they do indeed. So that dies. They still get more clues. I play a super sad Rubblebelt Maverick. And I see what? I see a Teysa. I see that Teysa over there. A bit too little too late, I am afraid, and they know that I'm not spending more mana, so it's like a clear tell, like I have absolutely nothing on hand. They crack their own clue. They crack their own clue again. That is unblockable, so because they crack clues, they get to loot more. This time they still bottom lands, so they might have maybe drawn also a lot of lands this game, but this loot and me not having anything just really marked this game. So I do draw Teysa, and I say like, okay, whatever. I have drawn a trick, opponent, beware. I want to try to get some value out of this. An opponent is like, well, I've seen you burn a lot of mana, so if you have a trick, it's fine, but you're only going to win the combat on one of my creatures, otherwise I'm eating both of you. I call your bluffs. Sad day. I do get some damage in, and I get to play Teysa and make a clue. I do put the Maverick counter on Teysa, trying to hold back this. But look at that. They did get their out cold, and now it's game over. It's not lethal yet, but it's so close to lethal for our opponent at this point. I can crack this for a spirit. They get in with everything. They loot yet once again a land, and I crack, and I can draw yet another land. I could chump block, but like these are tapped for the next turn. What am I supposed to do here? And I don't even block. I say like, okay, I need to try to attack and get yet another clue somehow to spend all this mana, but they had yet another trick, so I just die to that. Very unfortunate game. I think doesn't matter what deck I had faced, with so many lands and so much flood, it would have been impossible to win this game. So gonna try it again in the next game. Let's go to move to game 2. And if last game we drew way too many lands, now in our opening hand we draw just 1 land, because that's magic for ya, baby. Yep, that's them all. If this were on the draw and this were a forest, since I have Maverick, I would be keeping this. Play this, just like bin any non-lands. It is a keep at that point, and this is why I love this card so much, is it can make you keep much sketchier hands, but when it's a plains, I really cannot keep this, especially on the play. Like I would need to just rip lands off the top, and I need to do something. So this is a keep, thankfully. And I do have 4 spells and 3 lands this time around. Potentially binning a land and trying to get more lands with Maverick. I can go 1, 2, and I have a makeshift binding also to try to press some damage, and the Auspicious Arrival to push some damage. Last game, if we had been able to push a bit more damage against like some of their creatures, that would have worked much better. I bottom the arrival though, and say like, okay, I'm gonna play the Maverick and then bottom any land. So I guess that's also reasonable. I don't know what is 100% correct over here, but it sucks that I had to take that Mo because I would have liked to have an auspicious arrival. Play the Maverick, and what do I see on the top? I see double two drop, another consultant, and a tipster. Not the busted two drops that we have with Unicorn or Sentry in our deck, but very respectable ones. And Tunnel's tipster on two is when it really shines. So I would be happy to play that on turn two. And I'm initially I thought like, okay, well I can play tipster on two, and then turn four I can play double consultant. I can double spell, use all four of my mana. But there's a slight problem, and that is I only have one planes. So it's not guaranteed that if I play tipster, I can then play double consultant on turn three, and that is a very very annoying thing, honestly. And that's why in the end I say like, okay, I'll keep the tipster for the snowball potential, but I cannot keep a consultant because I need to try to. If I keep the consultant, it's impossible for me to play them both on turn three, because I only have one white, and I need to try to maybe get a morph, need to try to maybe get other kind of top end, but that's why I decide like, okay, I'm bidding the consultant and I'm keeping the tipster on top. There's even an argument for bidding the tipster too, since I already have a two, but I just want to keep the snowball potential available. And if I can draw morph, then the tipster gets very, very good. I play tipster, get in for one, and they play a 2-1, which I think is good. It's not looking super good against these two cards, but at least it prevents my tipster from attacking, and it can attack also on itself. Definitely good to play to the board. I don't know if maybe playing it as a morph on turn three and then bouncing my tipster if it gets counters is better for them, but that's what they decide to do. And what do you know? There was a planes there. I wouldn't have been able to play double spell consultants because I would be drawing the second consultant now. And of course, a planes is not what we want to see at this point. We would like to see a morph or maybe a green 2-drop. That is not Vitukasi Inspector, so not a lot to choose over there. But yeah, land is pretty bad. We can only play a 2-drop with 4 mana. So again, we're burning mana. So again, we're a bit flooded over here. Opponent Trons on turn 3 again, and even plays the Private Eye, which is a super powerful card for them. Gets in with a 3-2. So opponent is having a good draw. We're having a pretty bad draws in our games. We draw this removal, which doesn't help against this, but we do have to make shift binding this Private Eye, or else we're going to have a super tough game. We get in with everything. Good thing that this triggers, but still not the best spot, I would say. I'm afraid that opponent probably has better things. And what do you know? They have one of their bombs, Alquist Proft, which is not just a Sphinx's Revelation on a stick, but it is just a pile of stats that also investigates, so it's just really good in this situation. They do need 2 blue in order to do the Sphinx Revelation, but you don't need this at this point. Like, this is looking pretty bad for me, and opponent is confident enough to attack. And speak of the devil, the Vitukasi Inspector shows up when there's not enough evidence in the yard, again being a pretty bad draw. And here I need to remove this if I want to have any chance in the game. If they drop an island, and then they just crack this and draw more cards, I'm kind of like done for. So I just say like, okay, opponent, I drew a trick. Be scared of it. Don't block like this card. You want to save it, but they call my bluff, sadly. So tipster is gone. I do push 4 damage, and I do get to kill. Now that this is post attacks big enough to kill this. Which, by the way, if we had the bite down on crime, I would not need to sacrifice the tipster like that. But my opponent is calling all my bluffs on the tricks, and I don't have enough evidence to collect. So again, a very sad 1-3. But there is some pressure going on. If opponent, for some reason, doesn't have anything to play, maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a chance. Opponent still gets in. So if I block, they have auspicious arrival, and I want to preserve all my creatures in order to make this a 3-power thing. Maybe I get to draw a trick on my own, so I'm definitely not blocking. But not only do they have potentially auspicious arrival, they have a morph, and in their deck list they had the Gadget Technician and also Granite Witness, and they left 2 blue up, and they're not leaving white up for the auspicious arrival. So I'm expecting to get Granite Witnessed. Perimeter Enforcer is not the worst draw. Like, I can try to attack with these 3 now and put some damage. And I know that this is a flyer, sadly. But if somehow I can make the flyer get in, there is still a chance for me over here, despite everything that's been going wrong in this game. No Granite Witness. So it's Gadget Technician, most likely. And there it is. This is pretty brutal for me. The Technician eats my 1/3, which is just terrible. And I was like, please block Thopter with Maverick, then I can play Enforcer and put a counter on the Enforcer, and then I could maybe get there, like they're only at 5, and then if they have really bad draws, I could get there. But they keep the Thopter, sadly. I do have to play the Enforcer, maybe draw some Detectives the next turn. But then they also have Case of the Gateway Express, a removal. So there goes my chance of trying to close this game. It's pretty sad. And the opponent gets in with all 3 to activate the case. And that seems a bit sketch, but I also only have 2 creatures, so this is attacking as a 1/3. They know my deck list. They probably know that I have already used my 2 removal spells. I have still a Make Your Move. And I have 2 tricks still on my deck, but I'm probably not going to be able to get there with just these 2 creatures. So they attack, they activate the case, and they also play a 3/2. So that is now active, and I draw yet another land. I don't know what else to do over here. I played it, probably should have tried to keep it and bluff something, but they attack with everything now. And no matter how I align these blocks, there's no other top deck that's going to save me from lethal next turn. So just out of curiosity, they bin another land, and I thought about blocking, but I'm like, this game is lost. So very, very unfortunate draws versus Bernardo Torres. With a bit better draws, I could have maybe gotten that plan to function, pressure and get there, but very clunky game 2 with how the sequencing of the draws went, and game 1 we flooded like there was no tomorrow. There was no chance that I was winning that game. So dropped this match, sadly. So currently now at 1-1, and let's go and see round 3. Okay, round 3 versus MantisRhino or Marvin Chiong. This is the opponent's deck. There we go. So, black-green, one of my favorite decks to draft in best of 3 in this format. It's relatively open because people don't like black, but sadly, it was not me who has the deck, it was the opponent. And splashing blue for a lonely Evidence Examiner, which makes sense since it wants to grind. And what stands out to me is that there's quite a lot of removal: Slice, Extract, Long Goodbye, 2 Arcdruid's Charm that I didn't pick one of them, Undercity Eliminator. So there's quite a lot of removal. And then like mid-range pile, Killer Among Us, one of the best uncommons in the set. And top end with Spider. So, Assassin's Trophy also has removal, which, by the way, is not a very good card, but is also playable. And then just a smattering of creatures, just pretty standard mid-range creatures removal. The Eavesdroppers, pretty good since they're 2-for-1s. And then also Interrogator. So like there's nothing bad with this deck, but there's also like no bombs. So not super unhappy to see this, but I am the assertive deck against this deck, and I need to be careful with something like Glint Weaver because that can really stone break me. I don't have a lot of tools to combat the result of Glint Weaver. So I do feel good. It's not like a deck full of bombs, but I do need to be careful with like the removal and uh, just play to the board. I should be the assertive deck most likely, and but I do think I probably have a bit better card quality than this deck at least, which is strange to say because my deck is also not the best. But this is what we're dealing with over here. So let's go and check game one. We're on the draw. And this hand is definitely a keep. So we have a premium 2-drop followed by 2 disguises, which can flip. And then a make your move, which is pretty good against the opposing deck. There's like a bunch of mid-range and top-end creatures on the other side that make your move is going to be pretty good against. So when I play Skeptanol, Forest, we draw a Perimeter Enforcer, which can also be the 2-drop that we want to play. Opponent goes with a Gravestone Strider. So since opponent played this, I want to try to get in the air a bit, like try to not just pressure, but like this would not be getting in, whereas like a Flying Lifelinker is always nice. 3/3, so they could start to pressure me, so I need to be a bit careful. I morph the flyer. That gets in, another morph, and then I just play 2/2 drops and getting with 2/2. So this is why it was nice to have this flyer, because I have put some pressure and I haven't really taken much damage. Okay, so on the next turn, then they flip the Fairy Snoop, which is going to stone brick. It's going to brick wall my Perimeter Enforcer, and they can, by the way, flip because of the Strider. So they bind an Extract Confession. So I'm assuming they have quite a lot of removal already, so I need to be careful about that. And then here it's interesting. We draw a Get a Leg Up, which is pretty good, and we have this Phantom that we could flip and start to get in. So I thought a long time about this. Like if I play the Crowd Control Warden, it would be pretty good, but they probably have removal, and I also don't want them to remove this. So I was thinking here, what could they have? Because they have 2 green open, and I said like, oh well, Slice from the Shadows. The problem is they also can use this as black, so they could technically also have Assassin's Trophy or Slice from the Shadows. Slice from the Shadows only hits this, and the other only possibility at instant speed is Assassin's Trophy at this point. I thought about this a long time. I could have just like hold up over here, maybe stray their mana, and then end of their turn flip this, and then start to attack. That is definitely a possibility. I could play this up front, get a big creature, but that's probably going to die. I thought about this a long time, and I decided I'm just going to jam 3 creatures to put some pressure and try to use a Get a Leg Up. So that's what I did. So if there's any strange blocks happening over here or over here, I just flip this and it should be good. And I'm really only exposed to Assassin's Trophy, but I have this Get a Leg Up over here. And opponent decides to put these 2 on Sumala, and this Fairy Snoop blocking the 3/3, which is a good block. This doesn't get blown out by this, and it does. If I flip this, this is still dying, and I'm not killing anything. So I kind of forced into playing the Get a Leg Up, which makes you think like, okay, if they have something, this is going to be a bad play. And I'm thinking like, well, but they need to have the Assassin's Trophy at this point. And what do you know? They do have the Assassin's Trophy, which makes it, well, not the best, since the Sentry could be valuable, but it is also an Assassin's Trophy that they're not going to be using for Crowd Control Warden, nor the Phantom. And I also get my extra land. That's why the trophy is not the best. And now I do get to play this thing. I'm saying like, okay, they've used 2 removals pieces right now. They don't have, they only have 1 extract, so they need to be maybe doing something else. And the opponent plays the Eliminator, which is pretty good over here because it just kills my 7/7 for their 1/3. At this point, I don't have much going on, but so I just start to get in with the Defenestrated Phantom and hoping that they are not going to draw the Spider, they don't have extra removal. If that's the case, then this can maybe win me the game. So I'm kind of putting all eggs in that basket at this point, but it's what I have to do since I don't have much else going on. Just 1 attack over here. I don't know why just 1. Maybe they should try to get 2. I don't know if this is going to be able to get in. This is already being blanked by this, but they decided only 3, only with 1. And the Panther. So Panther is scary, but I do have the Make Your Move. And Teysa is an amazing draw. Get in, play Teysa, make a clue, and then let's see what the opponent does. So again, just the 2. I don't know why the Eliminator is not attacking here and putting me a bit more pressure. Definitely would be a good thing. And I just say, you know what, that Panther is going to need to be killed anyway. It has trample, so even if I wanted to have Teysa back or like trade Teysa for something big, and I don't mind, I do need to do that. And then Loxodon and Crack. There's also to notice that there's only 1 swamp, and other double black stuff. Only Persuasive Interrogators because the Eliminator has already been played. But there is only 1 black. I don't know why the clue was cracked before. Maybe there's no more instant speed interaction, but I think cracking the clue on my turn would be a bit better. And for once Vitugasi Inspector is going to be good because I have exactly 6 evidence in hand, so I can put the counter and gain life. I first draw, see what I have. A land doesn't help much, but I can cast this, and this is interesting where I put the counter. If I put it on the Phantom, I push more damage, but on the other hand, there's also already a wanted poster for this Defenestrated Phantom, so like if it gets removed, it would be pretty bad. I decided to put it into the Enforcer because I can gain even more life, and that's also enables an attack with the Seasoned Consultant. So I get in, and finally, like this Eliminator trades with the Consultant if that's what had been kept there all the time. Now, the plan with the Phantom has been working perfectly so far. It also helps to have Teysa, which is gaining an insurmountable value at this point. And what I didn't want to see there is land and Spider. So if opponent had Spider, I'm very lucky that they're not drawing it. That gets in, I don't care about it. Just another clue that I crack, another Spirit. And I'm not drawing like something to end the game immediately, but since this Snoop needs to block the Phantom anyway, I just get in with everything. Jump block on 4/3, and they do have an extra removal for the Enforcer, but still opponent is going down to 1. You get even more value, get another cracking another clue, and they attack with everything now. And at this point I say like Teysa has already done her job. I don't think they have any much more things to push damage through. They could have an Arctrade's Charm, but so I could possibly also take this, but I just say like, you know what, I'll just trade my Teysa for one of those mid-range things. Get even more spirits, and then just a Gorehound, Offender, trying to see just like an extra land, and then this game just is won. The Phantom, which is a very filler creature, was actually very good this game. After exhausting the removal from the opponent, it was the card that could get through the finish line because of the defense being just a 1/4 flyer. So this deck from the opponent is weak to flyers. It's only Fairy Snoop and Glint Weaver that deal with the flyers well. Of course, there's a lot of removal too, but happy that that my deck performed well. Helped to draw Teysa. It helped to have a normal draw compared to match 2. So up 1 game. And then game 2, we're on the draw again, and this hand is beautiful. So premium 2-drop into Gardener, and we also have the Collector to get some evidence if we want, but definitely a keep. Offender, we play the Sentry, and interesting that if opponent attacks, do I block? I can check like some of the tricks, no tricks over here and no tricks over here. So because of open deck lists, I would definitely block. So good thing that they don't attack, but bad thing for them that they miss a land drop. So they're on turn 3 and they missed a land drop. Obviously, that's very good for me. Morph the Phantom. I could have morphed the Gardener, but I don't want it to get killed. I want to be able to fetch the Swamp for Teysa, who I drew again. So next turn I will play Gardener and fetch a Swamp. So that's why I'm playing the Phantom first. Opponent does draw a 3rd land, so there's a game. And they play that 3/3. Then this is, I'm also quite proud about this play. I play the Gardener, I have priority on Arena, and then I get in with these 2. Now, I have a Phantom over here, and so I don't want to trade this for the Offender, but opponent doesn't know that this is my Phantom and not my Gardener, so they just take it. Before they take it, I flip the Gardener to get 2 counters and push 1 more damage over there. So if I had flipped this before attacks, then attacking with this would be bad. If I could just attack with these 2 and not play Gardener and represent a trick, which they would also not block, but then I miss 1 extra damage over here. But playing the Gardener first, holding priority because of the ability, and then attacking with both, I think is pretty good play. Happy about that. Opponent plays Clandestine Meddler and suspects one of the creatures to try to get a Surveil, but they're on the back foot. They've missed some land drops. So I don't know if it's a good idea. I think opponents should just stay back, but they might be on a desperate situation. They bottom the Assassin's Trophy. Definitely not good in this situation. And I'm just happy that I have 1 less blocker to deal with. My draws have been absolutely excellent this game. The hard-hitting Question, Inside Source, get a leg up. Teysa especially, like a dream. And opponent is on the back foot, so I'm very, very favored in this game. I just say like, okay, you know what? Kill that. So like, even if you don't want to trade with my things, you're not going to get value from the suspect. And I just jam because I have a get a leg up. And that just is dead, and then play the Teysa, start to get value again. Opponent draws the land, but it's a very, very awkward mana, 2 islands. I thought they only had 1 island, so they have 2 islands. They might have sideboard in like some more blue stuff, Crime Stopper Sprite or something, but there was only 1 island in the main before, so unsure why there's 2 islands now. And this game is pretty much over at this point. I mean, they could have something. I decided not to flip, because if I flip into removal, that would be pretty bad. And then just an Inside Source, and I will crack clues, no matter what. So the mana is spent into the Repeat Offender, and that's just game over, of course. But even if they had other spells, there's not much that opponent has that they can save. So got lucky in game number 2 that opponent was slightly mana screwed, but also I drew extremely well on game 2. On game 1, it was much, much closer. They had removal, and they kind of got me with the Assassin's Trophy on the get a leg up, but they didn't have an answer with the Defenestrated Phantom. And that's important to know how like filler creatures can still do well in pot drafts like Defenestrated Phantom. It's still a card that can win a game if it goes unanswered. So play the cards that fill roles in your deck, even if you don't have like four insight sources that you could get in some arena decks in best of one. So that's it. That was my path in limited merges at Karlov Manor in the AC5. I went 2-on-1. The match two drew very poorly. I think I got lucky on rounds one and round one and three, where I drew Teysa quite consistently, and especially round three. I think I drew quite well in game two, less well in game one, but I also already on the front foot, and there was no answer to the flyer. And then the Boros deck didn't draw very well either. But yeah, then I was really unlucky on round two with my draws. So 2-1, a bit better than I would have expected with my deck. Would have been nice to get the 3-0, but I think my deck would need like maybe two bombs to be in contention for that. Sad that how it went on round two. It would have been nice to draw a bit better, get the draws that I had in game two to compete against the power level of the bombs from opponent in round two. But overall, pretty happy with how that went. And it was important to go 2-1 in limited to end up in a good spot in the AC5. Anyway, that's the analysis. Thank you for watching, and I will be back with exploring analysis hopefully soon on my other 6 rounds. Thanks for watching.